if it's a good-looking show and there's something on it, I'll work with you on that. But when you're doing a show that the only positive thing is the production, but the match quality's down, the fucking star power and the personality quotient is down, the booking is questionable, and there's not even 500 people in the building, then you're basically, they're airing a developmental program on national television now for 2 hours. And that's why I say I liked OVW, but I knew what we were. We were local television, but the show was better than the one they're doing here. So I wonder, since they bought them from us, should they just go back and air the OVW programs in this time slot? The people would recognize that talent more than they recognize the ones on NXT now. Anyway.
You said I should argue with you. I'm waiting for the thing to argue with you.
Well, I figured you would have jumped in if you had any differences of opinion so far. They started this program out with Tommaso Ciampa, the new NXT champion. He comes out, and there's the guys in the ring, the young, hungry lions. Odyssey Jones, Braun Breaker, Briggs and Stratton, or Briggs and the Power Tool twins, Carmelo Hayes, his friend Trick, and another guy that they never identified, and I didn't know who he was standing there till later. He comes in later.
What about Von Wagner? No Von Wagner?
I don't think Von Wagner was there.
So you had Braun Breaker, but not Von Wagner.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Ciampa did a good promo about regaining the title and acknowledging the young men and women busting their asses, and gave a rah-rah speech to the fans to put them over, and he tried to basically tell them in a nice way, don't panic, they're not really fucking our show up. But panic, because they're fucking your show up. Ciampa worked his ass off on this, and I think he was working especially hard because he knew that he was giving a fucking motivational speech on the deck of the Titanic. Anyway, suddenly, in addition to all the people in the ring, music plays, and here comes Cameron Grimes. Because he gets in the ring, the other guy that didn't identify his name is Joe Gacy. And he starts to talk to Cameron Grimes, but then LA Knight's music plays, and he makes his entrance talking. But then, as he gets in the ring, Odyssey Jones interrupts him. But wait, there's more music. Here comes Pete Dunne and Rich Holland. And I wrote, what the fuck is going on here? It got busy. I know they want to portray that everyone's in the hunt, but this was just one person coming out after another. There were already people standing there. They're waiting for their cues. And then basically Dunn says, well, I see a bunch of people that doesn't have the guts to take the first punch. And so, of course, Tommaso Ciampa punches him. And they have a big sloppy fight with green guys and a full ring. So when they get some of them out of there, it got better. And then I'm not going to call him Braun Breaker anymore. Steiner and fucking Ridge Holland and Ciampa and Gacy, I guess. And here's the problem. They had set something up so that the two heels could be given bumps out of the ring, and then there could come Steiner and Ciampa, face to face. But then they doomed these guys because they wanted to end up with Ciampa and Steiner face to face, but they wrote into the format for some unknown reason, because they didn't just do this on the spur of the moment. As the guys are fighting, the announcers have to say, wait, there's something going on in the back, and I swear to God, if I'm lying, I'm flying, my feet ain't left the ground. They go to a camera in the back while the guys are in the ring fighting, including the NXT champion and his 18 top contenders. In the back, there's a bunch of girls shoving at each other and yelling at each other and being pulled apart by referees. In the middle of just a camera shot for, what was it, 15 seconds? And then they go back to the ring. So what had happened was they get down to the last four. Steiner and Ciampa and Holland and Gacy. And then you see Steiner is throwing punches at Holland, and Holland is just looking up, watching where the other two guys are and talking to Steiner to tell him what to do. And possibly they were waiting for this fucking pre-tape to come up. I don't know if they were going to see it on a screen or whatever, but somehow, finally, Steiner and Ciampa shit-can the heels out to the floor, and then they go to this footage of the girls in the back. When they come back in the ring, they're back in a four-way with the guys that we just left, and the baby faces have shit-can the heels out of the ring again, just like they did seconds ago, because this was too busy, and you're relying on not only a bunch of green guys, but also a fucking VTR to pop up to distract. It was a fucking mess. And then Steiner did the promo and sounds just like his dad. And this guy, he couldn't have money written all over him any better if they'd used green crayons. But they challenged for a tag match tonight with the heels, I guess the other fucking, I don't know what the fuck. This was a mess, was it not? With all the good intentions in the world, I know what they were going for. It was a fucking mess.
Well, when you say was it not, the problem is I didn't watch this.
My
DVR didn't record it, which I think may have been because I didn't set it to record NXT. I'll just add one thing, because after our conversation about Braun Breaker last week, I guess it was, several people got in touch and said, I guess it's a story going around, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's either Rick or Scott own the rights to the name Steiner. So people were saying that's why, Brian, that's why Vince McMahon and WWE can't use the name Steiner, because someone else owns it. To which I say, there's the difference between Tony Khan and Vince McMahon. If someone else trademarks Steiner, you know what they want to do with that trademark probably? Make money with it. You make them a deal, you use it. You don't say, oh, someone else owns something, we can't do it because we won't own it. That's the difference in philosophies, and that's why his stupid name is so stupid to everyone. He's a fucking Steiner, sounds like a Steiner and looks like a Steiner, and he will be one eventually. This is just a terrible waste of time, especially because, like you said, the little bits I've seen of him, and I did see a little bit of him from this week's show. I saw some clips on YouTube. The guy has Star written all over him.
Yeah. Well, and also, yeah, somebody else owns it. His fucking uncle. And here's another thing. How can you trademark Steiner and nobody else can ever be called Steiner? I can understand trademarking Rick Steiner, Scott Steiner, Steiner Line, Frankensteiner, whatever, but you can't just trademark a Christian name that nobody could ever use. Can I prevent any Claude Cornets? I don't know. Anyway, it's ridiculous. And why couldn't it be a good name? Braun Breaker.
And why would you debut someone named Braun right when you're going to debut someone named Von? Considering Vince has all these hang-ups about names, you don't have a hang-up about that? Two names that are clearly fake and stupid that sounds somewhat similar, both debuting on the same fucking episode.
Oh, wait a minute. The other place has Cage and Page and Page, where they could have Braun and Ron and Don and Lon.
They need a Lon. Anyway. How come no one has a Lon?
Because Lon Chaney Jr. has a trademark.
That's right.
All right, the next match on this program was for the Cruiserweight title. Kushida versus Roderick Strong. Guess what Kushida was wearing?
I don't know.
Tights.
Oh, trunks.
No, tights.
Oh, tights.
Yes. He no longer dresses like Marty McFly, but I still don't care. But at least Kushida makes Roddy tall. They wrestled 60 seconds and went to the break. And then come back from the break, apparently all of Roddy's heat. I have never seen anybody miss a clothesline.
あの時は小手さんにはお世話になりました。いや、こっちこそサヤのことで世話になった。サヤ？俺の一人娘。サヤちゃん、お元気ですか？毎日楽しそうに美容院の専門学校に通ってる。そらよかった。しかし、初めて会った時はチンピラみたいだったが、店長らしくなったもんだ。いや、まだまだ勉強することがたくさんあります。いらっしゃいませ。久しぶりだな。こちら俺の昔の先輩で警視庁の川田さん。あんたが和樹さん。よろしく。Put Roddy's feet on the ropes, and then the other heels in the diamond mine pulled Kushida out and beat him up on the floor, and then rolled him back in, and Roddy hit a finish. 1, 2, 3. So they wrestled for 60 seconds before the break, and back after the break, they were done in less than 4 minutes. So this was obviously just to get the belt off Kushida. Because if they're making all these changes, and they don't like smaller guys, at least Roddy looks like he's put together. Kushida looks like he's 5'2", and I'm sure if Vince and or Bruce Pritchard, if anybody has anything, they probably said, hey, why is that guy dressing like he just changed somebody's oil? Is he own tights? At least they're old-fashioned good in that way.
Hey, you brought up how much time they spent on this match on the show. Real quick, because Alan Blackstock tweeted this out. In this past week, the minutes of wrestling per hour on each show.
Sure.
The smallest amount of wrestling per hour is SmackDown with 15 minutes per hour.
400人の捜査陣を動員して不法滞在の外国人を一網打尽にするって作戦だ。
この店には不法滞在の外国人なんて一人もいません。
不営法にいろいろ引っかかってもらうんだろうが、早いとこ店閉めねえとしばらく営業できるの。え
え、まあ。でもどうしてそんな重要な情報を私に。1年前この店には迷惑をかけた。そのお詫びだ。
Ring of Honor.
そうだったんですか。
You've got 44 minutes of content time thereabouts and 14 minutes of commercials. And we tried to have between 30 and 32 minutes of wrestling as a rule. And sometimes that would fluctuate, but sometimes, and that was often not counting PTRs of wrestling, but it was just wrestling from last week. But you know, that's the thing, is you have to have a balance, and if you've got a live interview in the show with somebody that can really talk, then that's fine. But I can't figure out how you can do a wrestling show and only have 15 minutes of fucking wrestling in the hour. That's just ridiculous. Anyway, we're not done yet with this segment, by the way. Now that they've sent Kushida off to his great reward, Roddy and the heels are in the ring celebrating, and guess whose music played? Grayson Waller.
Who's he?
Exactly. Remember, he was on the show, I think, last week or a week before that, or whatever. I said, Grayson, they're not even trying now, right, these names. What the fuck? He has music. He came out. He's apparently a British guy, by the way, and he's got rap music. I guess rap's big in England now too. He's got the accent though. The worst strut since that thing that Shane O'Mac used to do. And he cuts a promo and challenges Roderick Strong week, and Bivens accepts it. So we've seen Grayson Waller once, I think, on the losing team of a fucking tag team match, as I recall, and now he's challenging for the Cruiserweight title. And I wrote, why does anybody in the world think that Grayson Waller should be a human being's name? Then Tony D'Angelo was on the dock again. It's an Italian gangster gimmick, and it's straight out of Goodfellas. And I bet you if this was the late 80s, early 90s, it'd be really good, but this gimmick will flop bigger than shit because nobody believes it, nobody cares, and
gangsters aren't hot, and this has shit stain style written all over it.
What do you think you're gonna do next to appeasement? You think they'll have Native Americans, headdresses,
We gotta
hillbillies? What do you think we're gonna have next?
either a hillbilly or a Chief J. Strongbow Jr.
Hi.
No, come to think of it, Scarpa's kid's no longer in the business.
Hi.
That's right.
Then, yeah, Jensen and Briggs. Instead of Briggs and Stratton, that's who it is. Jensen and Briggs. They did a promo, and I had conflicting emotions about this. Because the story is that they met in a bar and got in a fight and got respect for each other and teamed up. That's the gist of it, right? And they had actual security camera footage from the bar where the one guy bumps into the other guy and they get in a big fight and they have the fight in the bar. That they're B-rolling over the top of this.
Hi.
Of course it's preposterous, but it wasn't as fake looking as you would think. They did a decent job with the fight. I've been a proponent. I've been an advocate for security camera footage to catch people doing shit they're not supposed to be doing. I find it odd, if not very coincidental, that they would actually have security footage from this bar of the night they met and got kicked out of the bar, and they could requisition this from the police or whatever. I don't know, there's a little, but nevertheless, both these guys can talk. They can talk, and they can talk bullshit because they're Southern boys. So this didn't sound scripted. It sounded unbelievably believable. It's a preposterous scenario, and what you were looking at, the visual didn't help you believe it any, but at the same time, they sold it to you like they believe it. Because as I mentioned, they're Southern boys, and they can talk bullshit. So this was... We'll see what happens with these guys. They're just green. Kaylee Lynn, Apollo Miller. Then, in the back was Steiner and Ciampa. And they talked about their tag team match coming up later tonight, but then Steiner starts staring at Ciampa's belt. And there's going to be more on this in a minute. And then they were in the parking lot, and some guy was talking to these two girls, and I guess he's a wrestler, I guess they're wrestlers. They were kind of dolled up like they might be strippers. Maybe he's a ladies' man. Some guy tried to walk in the door first as the guy was holding the door open for the two girls, and he stopped the guy and ran him face first into the door because he was impolite. I don't know what the fuck's going on there. The next match, do you remember the first time, Brian, that you saw Tiger Mask, the original Sayama?
Oh yeah, of course.
And your mouth dropped open, and you said, wow, holy shit, right? This is amazing. Well, they got a new guy, Dante Chin. He's from Singapore, and he comes out in what looks like, the martial arts face kind of covering and a robe, and he looks very mysterious and Far Eastern. And he's wrestling Trey Baxter, who looks like a 16-year-old, 140-pound mechanic. And I'm thinking, okay, well, obviously, from the looks of this, he's one of the guys that they've signed. I think he is. He's either from Singapore or China. And I'm thinking, wow, what about if they found another Tiger Mask, a brand new Tiger Mask? The shock of everybody when that's unveiled, right? They didn't find another Tiger Mask. This guy, I know he's green, but you wouldn't really know it because Trey Baxter did all the work. Trey Baxter, come to find out, he works like Brian Hildebrand. And he's in much the same position as Brian Hildebrand. He's a good worker, but facially and physically and size-wise, he looks like any other schlub on the fucking street. Baxter did all the work here. Dante Chin won with his ugly offensive move. And Trey Baxter got halfway and put himself in that. So poor Trey Baxter, I don't know that I would have used him on OVW. Not because of his work, but purely. Trey Baxter proves that sometimes just because guys can do something, you because he's got the working down, he can do all the shit. It just, if a guy that looks like this can do it, you think, well, fuck, how hard can this be? Whereas the other guy looked great, and probably without Trey Baxter in there, couldn't have stuck his thumb in his ass. And then I realized there's no more Tiger Mask to be found, because anybody that is worth anything has now been seen instantly around the world. There's no more hidden talent. Because before home video, think about this. One of the most imitated, influential wrestlers in the world was Buddy Rogers, right? Scores, legions of wrestlers down through the history of wrestling until today, since Buddy Rogers copied his moves, his mannerisms, things he did in the ring, things he said. They idolized him like the modern generation idolized Flair, and then later on idolized Austin, whatever the case, they want to be like him. But can you imagine how much harder it was back in those days to want to emulate somebody when the only way that you could see them was intermittently on television? In the days of the network TV, the 50s, every once in a while Rogers would be on TV from Chicago. Or you had to be on the card with him, because there was no way to watch video unless you were in a television station, and films were not sold. So, point is, you could have undiscovered talent, especially from other countries, or even from smaller territories. It would suddenly burst out and people go, holy shit, Randy Savage. Debuts in New York, nobody'd seen him for 5 years unless they could get ICW television on a cheap UHF station in fucking Kentucky. Tiger Mask has been in Japan, has been in Mexico, has been in England. There's nobody in the United States and nobody really anywhere around the world besides the people who saw those TV programs in those countries or went to those shows even knew what the fuck. So all of a sudden, boom. But now everybody has a camera phone, or has, every promotion has YouTube. Everybody, for good or bad, you've seen. There's no more undiscovered shockers. And that's a shame also. And Dante Chin would have qualified anyway. Brian, do you remember Dean Douglas?
Oh, unfortunately I do, yes.
Well, they're trying it again.
What?
Remember I said that they're calling Harlem Bravado from the Bravado Brothers, from the Ring of Honor ring crew of 10 years ago. They're now calling him Andre Chase. And he is teaching a class at Andre Chase University. And he fucking tells guys how to wrestle until one of them brings up a point that takes the piss out of him, and he questions his knowledge or expertise, and that's when he has a temper tantrum and throws the desk and breaks shit. It is pure 1980s WWF gimmick. We're back to phony, stupid, unbelievable. Everybody's got a profession. At the top of the hour on this 2-hour television program on national television, 9 o'clock, guess what we see? Remember I mentioned that Joe Gacy? He is sitting in a chair in the middle of the ring in street clothes, looking like a guy that works in a bank. That's at the top of the hour on national television. He's doing a promo. He recites a statement. They're trying to, I guess now, they really don't know who their audience is. They're trying to make him a heel because he's woke. And he recited a scripted statement about the ring being a safe space, and he wants to promote unity and tolerance and peace. And he's supposed to be a woke guy, but he's a heel because the fucking demented lunatic running this company is a 75-year-old Republican billionaire, and he thinks that's a bad thing. The only bad thing about this was the promo didn't make any sense, and the people within the first 45 seconds, because they couldn't figure out who this was, what he was saying, or why they should care, flooded the fuck out of him. What? So then, Grimes' music plays, and out he comes, and there's no challenge in this. This is a match. Gacy wrestles in street clothes. Not even fashionable street clothes, just black pants and a black shirt. Probably because he looks like one of those people that they need their bodies covered up. But he knew he was going to wrestle, but he's out there in street clothes. And then Grimes beat him with his finish, and then Gacy tried to hug him because it's still all okay. And Grimes shoved him off of it. This was fucking rotten. Then they had a package on the wedding from last week, and it was just as embarrassing this time around. Then, Brian, the next match, a main event in anybody's book, Elektra Lopez versus Anna Shear. I wrote at this point, I wish somebody would hit me in the head so I could see some stars. Again, this match might have been okay for a practice match in wrestling school. It's the USA Network. And after Lopez finishes beating Anna Shear, she does a promo too. But while she is cutting the promo, Death Row, she's got the lucha suits with her, Elektra Lopez does. And the Death Row rappers come out on the ramp, but not B-Fab, the girl. No, while the lucha suits are in the ring looking at Death Row, B-Fab jumps in the ring and starts just wailing a tar out of Elektra Lopez. And all of the lucha suits are just standing there watching it. They don't do anything. And then the fucking Death Row hits the ring and they pull the girls apart. But none of the guys tried to stop or to help their women. I wrote, this show stinks of 1980s WWF. Then they were in the back. Some girl in the back walked up and kissed Trey Baxter on the cheek because she thought he did as good as he could. Then Odyssey Jones is coming to the ring, but something else on this program now that they're starting, and this is Bruce Pritchard all over the place, and probably Vince too. They'll send a guy to the ring for a match, but they'll go to the break. But when they come back from the break, they will be in the back for more talking with some of these peripheral characters, and then go back to the ring where everybody's been standing in that ring forever. And then it breaks up the flow of a match. It's fucking, because the matches are unimportant. So Odyssey Jones goes to the ring, but first Frankie Monet is in the back with Robert Stone and Jesse Kamehameha and Raquel Gonzalez. And next week we're going to get Frankie Monet and Raquel Gonzalez. Okay, that's good. But then another girl comes in that we have not seen before and says, well, that may be big news, but next week, even bigger news, because my talk show debuts next week, Lashing Out with Lash Legend. So apparently this girl's name is Lash Legend, and she's going to be lashing out on what she actually referred to as a talk show. So we're back to Piper's Pit, but we ain't got no Piper.
And this show sounds like the fucking pits. When are we gonna end this fucking review? Nobody cares about these people. Nobody cares about this show.
I'm just telling you. I am telling you, right? I'm warning the people on what they're going to see if they tune in on NXT. Because this is what it's become. Wait till you hear this. Odyssey Jones, guess who he wrestled in a handicap match? Kerry Millman and Darren Chiappetta.
Who the fuck are they?
Exactly. I wrote why? Question mark, question mark. This is a 2-on-1 handicap match like the old days, no tags. And they actually did an Andre match from 1974. Really, I've seen it. They did the Andre match. They go to grab his legs and try to take his legs out from under him, and he does the fucking stomp and the headlock on one guy, or the headlock one guy has that he picks him up and throws him off while the other guy's on the leg. They did all the right stuff, but the jobbers worked and looked so outlaw for this to get over, and no. And Andre Chase came out on the ramp and watched it, so Andre Chase may be in Odyssey Jones's future. Point is, Odyssey Jones has tons of potential. He has the natural personality. He weighs 400 pounds, and he won with a splash on both of them off the second rope, which looked just fabulous. And he can be a star, and he's on a sinking ship. And as soon as the match was over, Andre Chase came in with a chair. And they were going to do some kind of spot to show how big and bad Odyssey Jones was, right? And the chair was gimmicked. Well, what they were going to do was Chase was going to swing the chair, and Odyssey Jones was going to catch it and do something to show his power with this gimmick chair. But as soon as, much like me in 1985 in Texas Stadium, when I told them that Little John couldn't break the racket unless we gimmicked it, but if we gimmicked it, I couldn't hit him with it because it was gimmicked, and they insisted. Odyssey Jones catches the chair that Andre Chase swings at him, and as soon as he catches it with his left hand on the back of the chair, the seat of the chair flew right out. and you just seen the look on their faces when the gimmick chair fell apart in front of their eyes. And whatever the spot was going to be, Andre Chase just rolled out of the ring and walked off. And then they had a bunch of guys in the back talking about their title opportunity. That's another thing. Vince will not let them say title shot or shot at the belt. You can't say belt, but you also can't say title shot. That's why people are using the phrase title opportunity that nobody would ever say in real life. Because Vince makes him say that. Because he doesn't like title shot. It sounds like wrestling. Well, they did a special feature on Ikemen Hiro, and that's spelled J-I-R-O. Not on his wrestling. They did a feature on him in his closet wearing his fashion. And they did the fashion video where, boom, here he is in one jacket, boom, here he is in another jacket. And apparently this guy, he's obviously really Japanese because when he speaks, his accent is so thick you can't understand a word, right? But, so he's only been in this country a limited amount of time, one would think. And he's very young. So I guarantee you that he's well off. Because they did not buy this fucking clown 75 or 100 custom-made jackets all with his face on them. He somehow has gotten a business, but he's got money, and he's come up with his gimmick is that he wears ridiculously colored jackets with his face all over them, and he displayed all of his fashions in this video. It was fucking awful. And this apparently a Japanese mark that has clothed himself in tens of thousands of dollars worth of clothing before he has learned to goddamn wrestle. And then we have the new, that's why I'm saying, you know, we scoffed at this. Old shit Stain was saying he had worked with the WWE on a project just a few weeks ago, and we scoffed. We said, okay, like me, they've interviewed him for some DVD release they're going to do or some documentary. But no, this is him. They redid The Beautiful People now. Toxic Attraction. Gigi Allen, Jane Wayne Gacy, and Mandy Rose with the new hair color. They did a promo in the ring, and it was long. And Mandy Rose sounds like Sable. And this is a quote. This is why I enjoyed this review. I'm doing this review because there's no way they can ever do a show worse than this again, but I'm sure they'll try. Mandy Rose's quote to the fans, she's mad at the fans now. She said, and I quote, "Where were you fans when my face was batteredly and beaten?"
I've never heard that before.
"Where were you fans when my face was batteredly and beaten?" And the two next to her look over and go, what? And then they just start nodding their head like, yeah, where were you? Like, we don't know what she said, but yeah, we're going to help. I wasn't going to watch this, but God damn it, it was too bad not to watch. There was no emotion. She was lost. It was like English as a second language. Gigi Allen wasn't much better. They all three spoke. Jane Wayne Gacy has some attitude to it. But, you know, as I said, you know, she came out with, she didn't make up her own words. She spoke ones that she memorized over the past several days because she had to be working on it for days and days to memorize it like that. And like I said, Jane Wayne has the best facials and had the most oomph in her promo, but this was very long. And then we go to the main event that you've been waiting for. Holland and Dunn. Who was that? Godley and Cream had a hit on MTV about 30 years ago. Reminds me of Holland and Dunn. Godley and Cream. Anyway, and Ciampa and Steiner. And this was, it was the best thing on the show, obviously. Steiner's just like his father. He can do, as I said last week, he can do all the power moves perfectly because he's strong enough to fucking put them where they want it. He wants them to go and do it safely. I'm sure he's stiff on when he lays his hands on you because he's still green, and so I'm sure that's the case. He's got an abundance of personality. He's green on selling and on transitions, flowing back and forth, and they're still, everybody's talking him through this stuff, so there's a lot of communication you can see. But at the same time that he's not smooth, he's like the Road Warriors. Because of his explosiveness, it doesn't matter. They never got smooth. Even when they learned how to work, they never got smooth. It doesn't matter here because Steiner is just, you can tell he's into this. He's got personality. He doesn't look like he's going through choreography. He probably couldn't remember it at this stage anyway. But he's knocking people on their asses. What JR used to call smash mouth offense. It's not pretty, but it's believable, and look at the guy doing it. And they let him do just enough not to see through him, especially at the start, but Ciampa did most of the work. And they got some heat on Ciampa, and then he made an ice-cold tag to Steiner, but the fans popped anyway because he's getting over. The fans just instantly want to cheer for this guy. Not that they know who he is, but also just the oomph he's got. And he made his comeback with shoulder tackles and belly-to-belly suplexes. And when he grabs the guy, if the guy's not just like his father and his uncle, if the guy is not ready to go up in the air, he goes up anyway. You don't have to fucking push off. You don't have to post. You don't have to do nothing. He just grabs you and picks you up and holds you and turns you around. Then Dunn started working on his fingers, and they got brief heat on Steiner so that they could, then do a big four-way, and Ciampa and Dunn.
Hey Google, volume down 1.
Steiner and Holland could have a clothesline battle. They're the two big beefy
Hey
guys.
Google, volume down 1.
They did the finish. There was a bunch of shit going on. Pete Dunne gets his nightstick. Kyle O'Reilly comes to ringside. Kyle grabs the nightstick and hits Holland with that. They wipe Dunne out, and then Steiner hits the press power slam finish. The final nod to our 80s walk through WWF nostalgia. And if they were going to do 80s wrestling, they could do anything else besides 80s WWF wrestling, because every other wrestling in the world was good then. But they're doing the one. He grabs the NXT belt and he's going to hand it to Ciampa, and Ciampa's going to take it, but Steiner won't let go of it. And there's Savage and Hulk in the 80s. You don't have to make it so obvious these days because the kids aren't watching anymore. We've run them off. They're probably not coming back. So you don't have to make it quite so obvious. Especially now that everybody knows that it's all fake. But that was the NXT program. I'm going to watch going forward. I'm going to record the show and I'm going to zip through and watch this fiasco to see Rex Steiner. Otherwise, they've lost me. But Steiner is... Can you think of any rookie, and he really is a rookie, because as we've mentioned, it's not like that he's been on independent show after independent show in Hoo-Ha, Georgia, because they ain't been having them. We ain't heard about him. He's a true rookie. He's the best rookie in the business as far as being a potential, not just main event star, but main event megastar. Can you think of anybody else close right now?
To that level, no. I mean, I think Powerhouse Hobbs and people like that have potential, but he has potential to be the top guy.
Yeah. Well, and yes, and we're fans of Hobbs, and he does have, but already, you know, this kid, Hobbs has been wrestling for a little while. I'm just saying, you know, besides the name, how are they going to fuck this up, though? That's what I'm worried about. And are they even going to make him to where he hates the wrestling business and wants to get out of it? That's what I worry about. What do you think the odds are, Brian?
The odds are pretty good that they'll fuck it up.
Well, you know where we need to go to find out exactly what all the good odds are. We need to go to our friends at Stat Hero. See what I did there? Well, you didn't see what I did see what you did. Folks, Stat Hero involves statistics and being a hero and all kinds of good stuff, and you can win some money. Folks, we told you before, if you play daily fantasy sports, DFS for those in the know, then you need the folks at Stat Hero actually not even on your side. You need to be playing them because apparently they're pushovers. They'll do a job for anybody. You can whip them and win money just like that. I'll give you an example that they sent me in writing so that I could ad-lib it. I need to take a moment to breathe because last night I had $200 lineup going up against Stat Hero. For those who aren't familiar, Stat Hero is a platform where you can play the house one-on-one. All I needed was 75 yards, and Henry had me biting my nails till the fourth quarter, but my boy came through in the end, and I made a quick $200. Forget the sports bets. Betting on myself is the way to go now because I actually win. Now, here's the thing. If I knew who Henry was, and I assume it's football because they have quarters, and there was a fourth quarter mentioned, and I bet on anything involving sports, Stat Hero would be right up my alley. But I don't do any of those things, so I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But I do know that a bunch of you out there do indeed do these things because you've told me that. And so since you've told me that you do these things, I will bring you things to make this do easier. Stat Hero is the first ever daily fantasy sports book that puts the player in control and winning within reach. Here's how it works. Stat Hero shows you their lineups and dares you to beat them.
It's you versus the house in a head-to-head fantasy matchup. And remember, every time you have a fantasy, you should be head-to-head with the person that you are fantasizing about. You name the stakes, winner take all. You've got the advantage because Stat Hero is showing you their lineups ahead of time. No one else does that. That sounds positively criminal to me. You're in control. Stat Hero is DFS the way it was meant to be, one-on-one. You're going to make Stat Hero your bitch. Play Stat Hero now and change the odds. And if you go to stathero.com/JCE and sign up for free right now, you can get 100% bonus match on your first deposit using the promo code JCE. They're matching your first deposit. What do you have to lose? What does that even mean? I don't know, but I bet you do. Go to stathero.com/JCE and enter the promo code JCE for a 100% first deposit match. 100%, Brian. And they're showing you their lineups. What more can they do? It's like they're putting you over on purpose. But Brian, what are the odds that you're going to be involved in multiple programs this week?
Pretty good odds. I would suggest you go to Stat Hero and put a lot of money on that. But in the meantime, check out what's happening this week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information about all the shows on Twitter at Super Podcast or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes. A big episode this week of the Mid-South Wrestling Television Review Podcast, episode 100, where Mike Mills and myself review Mid-South Wrestling Television from November 16th, 1983, the debut of Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express. Hey! On Mid-South Wrestling TV. Hear our review and hear the first words Mr. Cornette ever uttered on Mid-South TV at midsouthpod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. It'll be up later this week. Speaking of later this week, it is finally time for the Mothership! The 605 Super Podcast, the latest episode, is now done. It will be out later this week. Brian Solomon, Howard Baum, the Top 10, Tim Hornbaker on Buddy Rogers, and so much more, including the segment where I talk about all the goings-on behind the scenes in the world of Arcadian Vanguard and, in some cases, wrestling podcasts in general. Not only did this segment get reviewed by the attorney is on the line for the segment. You'll hear it this week at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcast. Get through the archive today. The Mothership!
That's the air raid warning. Shelter in place when the Mothership arrives.
That was the starting bell. I wasn't sure.
There were a few people that should have sheltered in place when the Mothership landed. Well, they'll listen to the program and find out. Speaking of sheltering in place, it's time for the AEW review, where normally I drop a lot of bombs on people. But in this case, Brian, the Bizarro World. I just indicated a few minutes ago that NXT drastically let us down. The program that has been the all-time undisputed leader in letting people down with horseshit and tomfoolery and amateur cosplaying. What the fuck has happened? The whole world is turned upside down. This was one. AEW from the Arthur Ashe Stadium on the Wednesday night, what we're talking about now. Haven't seen the Friday yet, but on the Wednesday night, was this show top to bottom better than any WWE program that we have reviewed in either recent memory, or my memory doesn't go back too far for those shows, but I would have remembered one top to bottom that was as good as this, and I don't. Can you?
There's no question. There has not been a single WWE television show that has compared to this, and quite frankly, I don't think there's been an AEW TV show that's compared to this.
Well, that goes without saying. I mean, we've had segments.
Yeah, the Punk one was special for that moment, but then it was the rest of the show. This was, and by and large, they kept a lot of the bullshit off this show. This was, I think, their best television show ever.
Well, and that's why, because they kept the bullshit off the show. Imagine that. If only
If only somebody had mentioned 2 years ago. Maybe keep the bullshit off the show. But anyway, they had, again, all the elements of a major big-time production here. They had the big building that looked fantastic. They had the big crowd, 20,177 of them. Son of a gun, wouldn't you know who won the pony? You open up with the voice of Jim Ross, and the crowd pans, and everybody's fired up and there's signs. This looks like something. Then I went into this, as soon as I saw it was going to be the first match, I said, all right, Bryan Danielson and good old Twinkle Toes. Twinkle Toes McFingerbang, Harpo McFingerfuck, whatever name I've given him. Let's see, can Bryan Danielson do the unthinkable and make this clown have a real wrestling match with none of the bullshit that he usually does? That was my question, and I sat down to watch this. I've tried to in the past, put out of my mind Twinkle Toes' checkered past in the wrestling business. And I again tried to. I wasn't going to make notes on this as it happened. I was going to watch it as a presentation, see what kind of a magician Bryan Danielson is, and try to put out of my mind that Twinkle Toes is famous for wrestling sex toys and kids and other guys in thongs. The object of the match is to stick your finger up the other guy's ass, and dressed as Barbara Eden for My Dream of Jeannie, etc. And I'm still amazed. I must point out at the beginning that this guy can get booked at all, which shows the complete collapse in the wrestling business over the last 10 to 15 years, where anybody, regardless of what they've done to expose or embarrass the wrestling business, can still participate. Having said all of that, the best match Twinkle Toes ever had in his life. And all he had to do was not do the fake, phony, silly shit. Danielson comes out, he's in great shape. He looks fucking tremendous. He's not the biggest guy, but he's got a physique to match his frame. The fans were ballistic for him. And Bryan Danielson would never again get this spot or this ovation if he was in the WWE. It's a new environment with fans that have been waiting to see him leave the evil empire, get unleashed where he can do what he wants to do and what he can do. And even against old Twinkle Toes, which even though, you know, he's been a heel for however long, he doesn't, Omega does not have real heel heat because the people fucking like him because he does fancy stuff and that they enjoy. But here, they were actually for Bryan Danielson because, God, even these fans, and especially the New Yorkers, they know, okay, Danielson's a big-time talent and a major deal, and we like him and we're going to cheer for him, so they were able to boo Olivier. But, I mean, it's not a secret who led this, because why was it different than all of Olivier's other matches? Because this was a Bryan Danielson match, and he had a guy that is athletic and is a good athlete and can perform these moves to do it with him. So they started slow. They didn't run off and leave the fans like normal. Danielson was in control for a while, dictated the pace. Danielson is a great baby face, from the facials to his body language to the way that he just draws people into what he's doing. And they didn't take their first break until 20 minutes into the show, so it had time. You got involved in it. It wasn't like, okay, we've seen 4 minutes of this dream match, now we're going to a commercial break for just as long. You were into it by that point, so you wanted to stay through the break. And everything had made sense. They didn't bury the referee. At one point, they fought out on the ramp, and they stayed out there a bit long, but okay, because they were still moving, and it's all right. It wasn't egregious and obvious like all the other matches where they do that stuff. Coming back from the break, even, you know, at this point, even Twinkle Toes' goofy facials worked there because Danielson was making Twinkle Toes work like a heel. And he almost killed him at one point with that, Jimmy Carman's foul. Twinkle Toes almost killed Danielson. Did you see the buckle bomb into the buckles that became a backwards throw over the top rope because he was off and wasn't looking? Which is the problem with that move. You can't see where you're throwing the guy. And that was a close one because Brian grabbed the top rope just in the nick of time. But here's a question for you. Brian, both the Hardley Boys and Twinkle Toes use the knee lift and they both call them a something trigger. With Twinkle Toes, it's the V trigger. With the Bucks, it's the BTE trigger. Why are they using each other's move? And why do all of them look like shit? You can't take a bump off of them. And I don't know, where did they get this from? I've never seen anybody do knee lifts like this. And they always look like shit.
I think it comes from MMA originally, if I had to guess. I don't think they all look like shit. I think Omega's knees, there are a lot of them that I think look really good. And I think the difference is obviously the V trigger is one person, the BTE trigger is a group effort.
Well, sometimes they make contact and sometimes they don't, but you can't take a fucking bump. You're already on your knees in most cases, except when he runs and does the little skip and prance and Canterbury knee and whatever. Anyway. I said I wasn't going to be too critical of him here, because it was at least for once a good match. But that's the thing. The finger pointing and the skipping and the prancing was minimized, and the awkward extra movement that he has and the gesticulating that comes from him being self-trained. And normally it looks like you've gotten either a gymnast or a ballet dancer, and you're trying to get him to do wrestling moves, but this was all minimized here because of the way that they did it. And he's a good athlete, so he can do the moves, and he can be led, and he can be made better by a guy with Danielson's talent. It's just they haven't been doing it. They haven't had a guy with Danielson's talent. And this style match plays to Twinkle Toes' strengths because it's modern style with moves. He's rotten in a fight because he can't punch and kick, and you don't believe he's mad. And he can't have a Walter and Elia style match because he can't really wrestle as a shoot, and you don't get the idea of a badass tough guy in any respect from him. But this kind of match where it's the more modern style match and they do the moves, but they don't really either actually get evil and fight with each other. This is believable with him. And, you know, the crowd's going ape shit. They're hitting each other with everything. And he got him all the way through the match without doing anything really particularly stupid. And like I said, it was the best match I've ever seen Twinkle Toes in. Danielson's tremendous. The only problem I had here is the same problem that I have with the modern time limit draw. I don't know if they announced to the building that it was a one fall 30-minute time limit match. JR did at the top of when the bell rang. He says one fall 30-minute time limit. Paul Turner, the referee, he didn't beat it to death, but he just put the specifics in. But then they were, like I said, they were hitting each other with everything. The crowd's going ape shit. The announcers suddenly say, well, there's 45 seconds left. I didn't hear a call in the arena. Maybe there was.
No, you know what? I was hypersensitive to the audio because I was so in fear of the Good Brothers or someone coming down and ruining this because I was loving the match. And it was a few points towards the end where I heard something in the room. It wasn't clear at home, but I heard something, and I said, oh no, there it is. And then it went away, and I thought at first, oh, someone must have pressed the wrong thing and made a mistake. And I realized they must have been saying something in the room because the second time I caught it, I think it was Justin Roberts.
Okay, then that should have been piped through or called attention to in some more prominent fashion, because the point is, for the people in the building, they're trading kicks and chops and the bell rings and the fans start booing.
even if they, yeah, I mean, they're going to boo a draw anyway because they want to see more of the match, but it looked like it came out of nowhere. And I remember in, 2009, I guess it was, when I first went back to Ring of Honor, and I'm watching one of their house shows, and boom, 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 and the people are into the match, can't even remember who it was, and suddenly the bell rang. And what happened? Oh, time limit draw. There were no time calls. Well, we don't do that. Why don't you do that? Well, if we did that, people would know it's a draw. What? Apparently, in all of wrestling, when I, was peaceably in Louisville and not paying attention to what the rest of the world was doing, because I didn't care, they stopped. I know the WWE stopped even giving time limits in matches, but a lot of the other companies stopped doing time calls in the building. Every match, everywhere, house shows, TV, whatever, used to have a 5-minute call every 5 minutes. It's a 20-minute time limit, 5 minutes gone, 15 minutes remaining, 10 minutes gone, 10 minutes remaining. Everybody knew where the time was. That way, when you had a Broadway, a draw, a time limit draw, it's called a Broadway, you go 3 minutes remaining, 2 minutes remaining, 1 minute, 30 seconds, it builds the tension. And then the time runs out, and everybody's on the same page as, oh. But instead, they said, well, the fans are smart, so when we call 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left, they're going to know it's a draw, so we're just going to, out of nowhere, without calling any times, ring the bell at a good spot and expect the people not to be pissed off. So we put an end to that in Ring of Honor. And there were time calls, and there were goddamn, basically if we did a time limit draw, everybody knew what was coming in terms of where they were in the time of the match, not the finish, because the whole object and the reason why that this was not changed for 100 years is because you educate your fans. You have as many matches go down to the 3-minute or 2-minute call and then end as you do have Broadways, and then they can't tell. So if they're going to do draws, which that was, by the way, the finish to do here, I thought maybe they'd have Danielson beat him in a non-title match, but that depends. If they did that, they'd have to come right back with a title match in the fairly near future, and I bet they're probably not going to do that. So this way, they gave him Olivier's greatest match. Danielson showed what he could do on national TV. They tore the house down in the big building and made the big crowd happy, and they left it open for the future. So the draw was fine. But if they're going to start doing time limit draws, they've got to fucking educate the people, and they need to start doing that by doing time calls in every match they have. And that way, you can never tell the difference. But anyway, overall, as I said, Danielson was great. Old Harpo hung with him. They eliminated all the stupid shit. They didn't overbook it. They didn't bury the referee. The match made sense. And everybody loved it. And then there had to be a little bit of an afterlife, but even that was kept short because here comes the Hardy Boys. They tried to attack Danielson, but here comes Christian Cage and Jungle Boy and Dino Douche, and they have a bit of a sloppy fight, and the heels leave. But it didn't harm what they had done, which usually anytime you see the Hardy Boys show up, there's going to be all kinds of shenanigans, but it was quick, and it didn't hurt anything. So Danielson paid for himself in that one segment, to me, because it not only gave their biggest crowd ever and their best TV show ever, the best 30 minutes of the show ever, but also it showed that, yeah, the other dipshit can do it if he's got somebody to do it with that can lead him and not let him engage in his worst instincts. So, bravo, bravo. What'd I miss?
I don't know what you missed. I thought it was an excellent match. Started off a little slow. I thought too slow, but then by the end of it, I didn't care about that. The atmosphere was special. It was, Hogan Rock. It was that CM Punk debut.
Well, and wait a minute, then why, maybe a little too slow? The people were cheering and chanting before they touched each other. Why should they have rushed that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm talking about once the match got going.
Yeah.
But again, that's just me, and I can see it either way. But, it's one of those special nights with the crowd. I thought Omega was great. I know you're not going to give him credit for anything, no matter fucking...
I just did! I said it's the best match he ever had.
He can cure cancer. You give credit to the patient. It's... but I think... Because you're giving Bryan Danielson all the credit, and I think
that's because he does it. Why has Twinkle Toes never done this with anybody else?
He's had good matches, and you haven't either... There are matches you haven't watched, and there's matches you haven't watched at times. Him and Pac was great. Him and Okada, those were excellent matches.
Okada didn't wrestle him on AEW television. I'm talking about this right here.
I thought the 60, Iron Man with Pac was great.
He's lucky that I will dignify his fucking wretched presence by watching him after he had a match in front of people with sex toys. So... fuck him and feed him pig heads, but I gave him compliments. He's athletic, he can do as he's told, and if he'd have started out at a proper training program, by now he'd probably actually be a really good worker, instead of a fucking prissy, prancing asshole.
And my biggest fear was this would degenerate into, like I said, the Good Brothers or something. And thank God it didn't. And... the booing for the 30-minute draw, that was going to happen no matter what. If we're going to do a draw, people are going to boo, but then they're going to get over it quickly because they're going to think about the next match. Will it be a 60-minute draw? What will be the next match? And the potential is there with these two guys to have a classic series of matches. AEW doesn't do a lot of immediate rematches. It'll be interesting to see what they do here. Adam Page still has to get figured back into this somehow.
Oh, yeah, that horse has left the barn, no pun intended. The best thing for Adam Page would be for him to come back and get involved in something with somebody that he can beat in the end and get over on. Because he ain't gonna beat Harpo for the belt now, not with this fucking high-priced talent that's come in. That would be insane. The time for that, they dicked and diddled around until it passed.
So let me ask you this, all things being equal, it could be any two wrestlers in there. World champion versus high-profile challenger, 30-minute draw. What do you do coming out of this? What do you do next with these two guys?
I try to prolong as long as I can the rematch, because Twinkle Toes shouldn't want it, and Danielson and the fans should be pressing on his behalf, and he should try to figure out every way he can to avoid that and put some stumbling blocks in Danielson's path so that they can, when they actually do put the title on the line, they do it on pay-per-view, and they'll get another big buy rate. But
now, can I ask you one more question? Not necessarily just about this match, but the first, 35 minutes of this show here. Do you think anyone in Connecticut is going to be watching this? In New York, a stadium that never run, looks great, going crazy, and of course it's former Daniel Bryan on the show. What do you think they're thinking soon?
I think everybody else in the company has got to be thinking, good Lord, is there some way we can invoke the 25th Amendment on Vince? Because they have to at this point. Look, we've got 20,000 people in New York. Even Crockett. When Crockett was neck and neck in the 80s with Vince everywhere, we couldn't get a fucking foothold in New York. Even WCW during the Attitude Era. What did they do in New York or in the New York metropolitan area?
Nassau Coliseum. That was as close you can get to Manhattan, yeah.
And it don't hold 20,000 people. And so, and also, all they needed to do, anybody in the WWE office or anybody in that company, all they needed to do was watch the television show that they perpetrated on Tuesday night and then watch this one and go, holy fuck, we're in trouble. But I'm sure, Vince may be happy, but holy crap. Anyway, and I mean, that's 35 minutes in, but guess what happened next? Black Mussolini and Arthur Ashe. Metallica. By the way, Punk has a great tweet.
this past week before that show. He said, I just got off the phone with Arthur Ashe. He can't wait to have us at the stadium. Hope I don't tear the muscles in my back slamming that 600-pound giant. Metallica.
That's because someone called him out because I guess, and we'll probably talk about it tonight because we got a few emails. He called Hulk Hogan a piece of shit in an interview. So someone was like, how dare you, Hulk Hogan, and this and that. And that's why Punk head out.
Anyway, here comes CM Punk. And there's signs, and there's energy, and there's chants. And this is a big-time wrestling show. And I talk about NXT. We've been watching SmackDown. We've seen clips from Raw. Both of those shows look like a game show on Nickelodeon next to this. Which I think is what they're trying for with NXT, with that off-putting color splotchiness everywhere. But again, he put on a promo class. He was happy. He's happy to be there. He puts the people over and how much he's liking being back. But then he directs it to the issue. People are saying, well, we want the pissed off CM Punk back. Well, what have I got to be pissed off about? Oh, yeah, these fucking guys. They tried to put me through a table. The table didn't cooperate, but blah, blah, blah. Great babyface psychology to this. He's telling them, again, what they know to be true, and he's happy, and they're happy, and everybody's happy, but then he's pissed off about this, and he sells the match for Friday night, and he finished off fired up. And it's CM Punk in the ring in front of 20,000 people. 45 minutes into this program, it's still big time. What'd you think about this promo? Did you like the way that he addressed people saying, well, you're so happy? Like nobody's allowed to be happy.
I mean, he's a great talker. It was a great promo. He's a smart talker, if that makes sense.
Yes.
He's always clever. You know, whenever you actually follow what he's saying, it's a very clever path to how he gets to where he's going, and I enjoy it. Good promo, and again, hot crowd, 45 minutes into the show. We've gotten a lot of wrestling, top-flight wrestling, top-flight serious promos. The commentators weren't a problem, hot crowd. This just felt so professional, so just on the ball.
And here's another thing. You talked about wrestling time and how much wrestling is in a show, and it's a great wrestling program, but when you have a guy at that level, main event stars, the live in-ring promo is better, it's bigger, it's more of an attraction sometimes than a match. So that's what when you follow up a big main event match with 13 people in the Hardy family office in a live interview, that's when but when you can follow a main event match with a live CM Punk promo, you're farting through silk. And that's the thing, is it's names, it's star power, it's people. If a guy can talk, he can carry a fucking 10-minute live interview segment. It's just when guys that can't talk are given scripted bullshit and sent out there, and it goes forever because they've got to say everything they were told to say. That's when you go in the hole. But anyway, 45 minutes in, great match, great promo. And I'll tell you why CM Punk, honestly, Brian, has not been pissed off like his previous personas and has been happier. It's because he's taken, he's a big listener to the program. He listens. Yeah, he listens every week. What? And he's taken our advice, and he started having a good, tasty, and healthy breakfast every morning. That's why he's happy Punk now, instead of pissed off Punk.
For the record, we have no idea what CM Punk eats for breakfast, so we should be very careful here. He could be doing all sorts of... He may not even eat breakfast.
He's got to be eating breakfast, because why else would you be that cheerful and that happy? Well, he's getting up every morning and he's eating a big bowl of Magic Spoon. And have you seen the conditioning that he's got? He hadn't been in the ring in 7 years, and he looks great. He's got the cardio. That's because Magic Spoon is not junky, sugar-filled cereal, but Magic Spoon is healthy cereal that tastes great. They've somehow found the incredible secret to making great-tasting cereal with only 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. They have somehow found a way to manufacture this stuff where there are only 140 calories per serving,
while being keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and low-carb. And somehow they're allowing the fans and the customers out there to build their own boxes. They can pick their own custom bundle between cocoa and fruity and frosted and peanut butter and blueberry and cinnamon and cookies and cream and maple waffle. Because the cookies and cream and maple waffle, when they were brought out originally, were on a limited time only and sold out, boom, just like Jim Cornette action figures. So now cookies and cream and maple waffle are back permanently, and they're delicious. So I think that's what the thing is. CM Punk has decided he's going to get up every morning there in Chicago in his mansion. You know, he lives in the place that Al Capone used to live in.
You don't say.
He's going to get up in his mansion, and he's going to have his butler Jeeves go and get him a bowl of Magic Spoon, and he's going to eat that, and he's going to be happy because Magic Spoon has 100% happiness guarantee. If you don't like it for any reason, they will refund your money. Imagine if wrestling promotions had that these days. NXT would be bankrupt. Anyway, folks, right now, go to magicspoon.com/Jim, Jim, to grab a custom bundle of cereal and try it out, and use the promo code Jim at checkout. Save $5 off your order. magicspoon.com/Jim. Use the code Jim to save $5 off. Eat the breakfast of champions. Be just like CM Punk probably is, if we knew for sure. But I can say with reasonable certainty that he does everything I just said he did. So CM Punk.
No, take the word certainty out of that, and maybe even the word reasonable. Maybe take both those words, reasonable and certainty.
All right,
together and independent.
I can say with reasonable certainty, except not using either one of those words, that CM Punk eats Magic Spoon for breakfast every morning. But I won't use reasonable or certainty.
For the record, we have no idea what CM Punk eats for breakfast, and he is in no way connected at the present time with Magic Spoon. But check them out today.
Well, sooner or later, if he gets a little bit more popular, they'll go to him and open up a sponsorship deal going on there. But in the meantime, yes, eat the breakfast of champions such as, but probably not including CM Punk.
What other champions did we have on Dynamite this week, Joe?
Well, the next match I was waiting for also, and was not disappointed. MJF with Wardlow in his corner took on Brian Pillman Jr. with Julia Hart. Wardlow was back in a suit, more befitting a man of MJF's finances and importance in the world. And I'm not sure that the cheerleader was necessary for a grudge match where the heel told the babyface that his mother should have swallowed him. But she's a nice, perky girl.
And to be honest, that's one of my big complaints. That's really my only complaint about this whole little program, I guess we'll say. It's been several weeks. I think MJF's been great. I think Pillman shows so much, but he doesn't do anger. He doesn't show at all. After all of these things, and if this doesn't get him angry, what's going to? He doesn't show anger. He just wants to celebrate with the fans, it seems like.
Well, and I mean, that's a thing that baby faces do early in their careers when they do a thing. Like you'll see Rex Steiner do it. They'll do anything and they'll look at the people and fire up, because they just, they naturally want to get some reaction and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next. With Brian, who's had some experience now, he's not doing it because of that. He's doing it because he's in a single program on his own, being featured against the top guy, and he's feeling more cheers. He's hearing more cheers. He's feeling more love coming at him. And maybe he feels like he has to acknowledge that. But in this instance, and with what's gone on from the time I know when he comes out on his entrance, he wants to be smiling, or when he foils the heel MJF and he does something to MJF, he wants to smile and show the people, hey, yeah, or if he outsmarts him, he wants to point at his head and smile. Don't smile. Don't be happy. You're still pissed. You're still mad. Show animosity. Show aggression. Don't crowd the heel when he's selling, but close in on him. Make it uncomfortable for him in a working way, but don't crowd him while he's selling, and don't rush, but at the same time make the moves like you are trying to stay on top of him and be more aggressive. He started, obviously MJF was calling this again, but it was a wrestling match. Early in the match, Pillman, 2 arm drags, a hip toss, and a backdrop. Goddamn, I thought I was watching wrestling again. It's been so long. Brian also needs to hit the ropes harder. When they're going into a spot, he needs to dig in and he needs to run and hit the ropes with... that's the one thing. When Shawn Michaels would be in the ring coaching guys or, just doing a workout session or whatever, he had a thing, attack the mat, attack the bumps, attack the ropes. If you watch Michaels, even though he was so thin and didn't have a lot of body weight, every time he hit the mat, it made noise. Every time he hit those ropes, they bowed out and he sprung off of them because he was going into those things with such velocity. He's controlling himself. He's not out of control. He's not reckless, but he's fucking going full steam ahead. And Brian was, when they're hitting the ropes doing a running spot, he needs to dig in. Dig in the balls and the toes, kid, and running across the ring. They came back from the break, and MJF had the heat on Brian going. He was working on his arm. Brian does sell well. See, now some green guys, and I still say he's green even though he's had this much experience, but younger guys, but some of the green guys, like Steiner, it's not natural for them to sell. It's natural for them to be on offense because he's been a pro football player and a competitive athlete, whatever. With Brian having a little bit more experience now in terms of the wrestling business and probably having a little bit more grip on it mentally, he sells really well. Sometimes it's his offense where he's not necessarily as confident. So it's just differences in guys. But he made a big comeback, Brian did, and then MJF slides out and he hides behind Julia Hart to avoid the dive, which that was fine. That's always hide behind a woman if you're a heel. And then as MJF is menacing her, I guess they allowed him to snatch her fucking wrist or whatever. I mean, let's face it, if we were still in the wrestling business, she got up in his face, he would have taken his fucking left hand and snatched her by the back of the hair and bent her back where she could make the face, and he could fucking see, everybody in the building could see that he's telling her, I'm gonna knock you out, you fucking skank, and draw back, and then eat the fucking missile drop kick through the ropes. That's what it should have been, but instead, because we're where we are today and everybody gets offended, he grabbed her wrist and talked to her in a rude manner until he ate the missile drop kick. But that was the distraction. Once the grinds make sure she's okay, which is obviously the way they gave him an out in the finish, but that's also the reason why you shouldn't bring a girl to a wrestling match. Once she's okay, he gets back up on the apron. He's going to do the springboard, but MJF has had time to recover. And as Brian does the springboard, going for the fucking air Pillman, MJF catches him in the Fujiwara armbar, the salt of the earth, takes him down, and he's got a tap out. That was a nice, quick finish where MJF was a prick and, took advantage of a situation where Brian was trying to help his girl second. So that was a nice finish. Again, this is for MJF to get heat. And so I didn't mind the babyface tapping out because just the fact that Brian is now in singles matches and against main event guys instead of the dregs of the preliminary guys, he's being elevated. He's being focused on. And the story's not over yet. And will Brian get, the comeuppance that he deserves on MJF? We'll have to wait and find out. That's the whole idea. So this was a good piece of business, too. Brian's coming along. MJF did a good job. People were into it. Again, nothing silly, nothing phony, no obvious cooperation, no ridiculous gymnastics, and they didn't bury the referee. It's like it's a real wrestling show, Pinocchio. What'd you think?
I thought it was really good. It's really enjoyable to watch MJF just work a room. Is that how you would say it? That's like you say if it was Frank or something. If it was Frank or Liza or Julio, you'd say it like that, but...
Or Jackie Mason.
Watching MJF work a room is great. I saw something. Did you see this? Someone said it to me. I guess his parents. Yeah, got like signs like "I hate MJF" and "We're embarrassed by MJF." I saw an interview with his mom who called him a fucking idiot.
They had a sign. They had a sign that said, "We're MJF's parents and we hate him too."
Oh, good shit. But really enjoyable, and I just want to say, despite what I said earlier, I'm not down on Pillman Jr. I think he's got a lot of potential, and he's got so much likability.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens when you put Griff Garrison back next to him, but time will tell. But that's my only thing. This should have been his big showcase to show that he could do this "I'm pissed off and I'm going to get you and I'm going to kick your ass" thing, and he can't do it. Or at least he hasn't done it. Like, this was the thing, to go out there and just want to kill this guy, and it was just another match, it seemed like, for him. And that's not to take away from the match itself or the work of MJF, and I'm very happy to see Wardlow back in a blazer or a jacket, whatever he had on there. But this was good. But it would have been better. It would have been better